Okay, last part of this part of my series. The last picture I painted from this list I made, I explained in the first videos. This is about extreme emotions. So it was the symptom described which could show that you have a trauma of war or something else, is that what was described on the list was you're extremely cold emotionally, distance. Oh, sorry. Thank you for being here. I'm actually pretty nervous. That was kind of interesting that my body reacted strongly, and does. Maybe I should take this Peter Levine. He says, put your right hand under with your heart and your left hand over to create like a safe space. Yeah, this as I told you in the beginning, I took the topics and put them on papers and shuffled them, so I wouldn't know in which order they would come when I made the paintings. And then I kept the order for the videos. So this one came up last. And the list that I had found said it was a coldness of emotion. And I reacted strongly when I read that, because for me it's the opposite. So I have lived most of my life with an extreme emotional imbalance. As it is also being called in the literature, like you get hijacked, emotionally hijacked. So something happens, somebody says something, and you react totally over the top. And your brain also tells you that. I mean, but your emotions go wild. So it's like hijacked emotions. You're not flying you're not flying the airplane. It's just going wild. And this has happened to me so much that I remember exactly when I was younger, I never thought I would be 35. I mean, my inner life was so intense that I was completely convinced I could never make it to 35. Now I'm 54. I think that is successful. Well, when I said my inner life, then it becomes very clear that I didn't see myself from outside, of course. I was inside me, but I wasn't allowing myself so much expression. For a while I was writing diary, and there I remember I've got them also somewhere. That I, sometimes I just let the pen go over the paper, wrote words super big, and I was crying, and so, but I wasn't, I didn't feel I had so much space to actually express these big feelings I had. So anyway, I think why I got so agitated or stressed, or what you want to call it, about making this video was that this really, when I painted this picture, it was like, wow, I was so surprised. It sounds crazy, but it really did develop in a way that I think if I had tried to think it, I wouldn't have allowed myself to think it. Because it's really going against my mom's myth. And that is also, I think I put it in the description box somewhere, but that is why I'm doing this in English, because I think the chances are less, even though she speaks English, the chances are less that she will get confronted with it. And now she's in her late 80s, and I just don't feel that she could handle this. And I don't think she has to. I mean, I'm doing it. I'm in that family line. I'm in that tradition. I'm her only and oldest daughter. And I'm doing it also for my daughters and eventual grandchildren, maybe someday. And maybe, I don't know. Well, I feel I am doing it, and I don't think she needs to do this. Okay, I show you the picture. So, this is me as a baby, and I'm caught between these strong forces of ice and fire. And I think the fire part you can, if you have followed this series, especially the last one, when I said that my father would transform. So this, of course, only this transformed part of my father, the monster part, not the normal part. Then that part probably is easy to understand. What shocked me was this. It was it shocked me, because my mother's myth is very, very strongly to be very loving, very available, really kind of mater dolorosa, also giving it all for us, for the children. And that is also when my father would get most angry, is when we made my mother cry. I mean, I remember getting beaten. You made mama cry. Why did you make mama cry? And I think for him that was the relationship to his mother also, which was spooking there. That's funny. I never saw my grandmother cry. I guess it was not. You didn't do it, did you? Yeah. But I actually had a dream once where I was born, and after I was born, I looked around in the room, or I felt it was more like a feeling of the room, and the attendants, so the nurses, they, in my dream, they were like machines. They were like robots. I saw them as robots. There was 2 robots. And to my great shock, the next morning, my mother was made of concrete. And I mean, it sounds to me so terrible, because she really, really, really tried. So this is not about putting her down at all. The thing is that she couldn't. So what she did was, on the surface, somehow, it didn't reach down. So there was what they call CEN, childhood emotional neglect. But not because she was a drug addict, where it could happen. she's just not available because she's on some trip or something. But just because she wasn't available to herself in large portions. So for me, this, you see the huge ears, and the hands trying to yeah, it's a good question. I think it's trying to make connections, trying to connect it together. I think that's what I've done very, very much. And also, my parents used me as that. So like, you talk to Mama, she doesn't listen to me. You talk to Papa, he won't listen to me. So I was the connector. Also between my brothers and my parents. I once said to my husband, sometimes I feel like I've been standing like this all my life, like holding ropes of wild horses, kind of, and I'm in the middle trying to hold this incredible, very energetic volcano together. Well, you know, what I thought that I point out, I'm not sure how much I made it clear in the other videos, is that all these things are not only bad. I mean, of course, it's painful, and no question about it. And you shouldn't be a victim to this, no question about it. But you do learn, if you survive, which I did in this case. I mean, I'm more than 35. You do learn skills which are useful if you're in charge. That's what I mean, right? You learn to fly all kinds of airplanes, but it's no good if they're getting hijacked. So as long as you're in charge, you learn a lot from this. So there is something, for me, important to think a positive aspect. Like this listening in, this, as I told you last time, when it overwhelmed me in the subway, and I was forced to listen to everybody's feelings. Of course, that was no fun, and it scared me really much. But to be able to listen into somebody who comes to you and says, could you listen to me, or I'm having a problem or something, can be very positive, I think, if you don't get hijacked. So that's the thing, that's the process of healing, to be able to be in command. Or at least notice when you're not. And then to be able to give yourself space, step back. Step back and say, wait, right now I can't. I'll call you tomorrow. You know, something like that. And that is something that I'm still learning. I was not at all capable of that through most of my life. So I did really stupid things. When I look back, in hindsight, you're always wise, they say, but when I look back, I mean, I trusted the wrong people. I loaned out money without, you know, any security and lost it. And then I got really shocked that I did, because I got the word, didn't I? She gave me her word. Oh, well, you know, to some people it doesn't mean a thing. I think that I might have been very strenuous also to my friends in periods, because not everybody could understand that emotions would go like that, you know. Yeah, I definitely had a serious problem with boundaries, like I told you with my boss, or to just say stop. And I'm working on that very much. So what these German ladies said that I listened to that work with trauma, Dami Scharf and these very good women, that as far as I understand it, all do it from, that's why they're so good, because they know what they're talking about. They are coming from trauma. So that it is handicapping because the self-regulating system is disturbed. As far as I understand it, this base is based on a theory that every human is born with a self-regulating system. It's natural. It's like for an animal. It's natural. It's innate. And if there's strong, especially early trauma, this is disturbed. So you cannot regulate yourself. And I think this picture really really makes this clear. And it also makes clear, I think, why, for me, why I have such a hard time to relax. To just let it be. Just be. I have a really hard time. Still, it used to be much worse, but it's still, I don't have that, I don't have an easy time, so I work on that like almost every day. Okay, yeah, I want to tell you something about my father, I think, which also makes, which is interesting, looking at this, is that he could also, there was like a modus, which I haven't talked about yet, which was also quite rare, but did happen. And that is, I think he was probably drunk, but you know, that he was an alcoholic, I didn't understand until I was adult. It was my brothers who pointed it out. I mean, that is how far away I was from really seeing what's going on. Because for that you have to have understanding. You're not just reacting all the time. So, but he had this modus of being somewhat depressed, I think, sad. And then he used to say, often with tears in his eyes, I just want to be normal. I just want to be normal. I just want to be normal, almost like a prayer. And he was not at all a religious person. He I think he was angry with God, I think. I'm not sure. But he was overtly not religious. Also suffering from it in times. So I remember that one time when I was an adult, I actually asked him, no, right, I actually researched the word normal, because I was kind of, what does he mean? So I looked up the definition of the word normal, and the word normal, of course, is really purely statistic. So the norm is what the majority of any group expresses. That's the norm. That's where normal comes from, which means to be like the majority. And then one day I confronted him with that. And I said, what really do you mean by normal? Because it's, you know, you want to be like everybody else, because I didn't think he... But he said yes. But I think what he really meant was balanced. That's not like everybody else. But I think, well, in my experience, few people that I've ever met in my life, whichever country I'm talking about, are truly balanced in themselves, whoever they are, whatever they do. That's not normal. But I think that is what he meant. Because he also really got thrown around, and I told you he was crying sometimes and saying, I don't want to hit you, I don't want to be the bad guy. But he was hijacked by his emotions all the time. So I think what he meant was balanced. And he had a much harder time with his emotions than my mother. And I think that has to do with the male and female thing. And that I think is something also we as a society need to look at, because right now there's this strong, especially in Sweden but also in other countries, this really strong emphasis on feminism, and of course where there's actually facts that need to be addressed, perfect. But we're not going to heal this society just by strengthening women. We need to find balance. And one thing I got so aware of through my father and my brothers is that for men, it is still not really accepted to express emotion. So then this happens, right? This explosion. They don't express it, they push it down, push it down, push it down, push it down, and then bam! In whichever way. Could be also auto-aggressive, as to hurt yourself in different ways. So I would love to live in a society that was working on balance. I believe that the archaeology shows us that we've had matriarchate. We've had matriarchal societies that were dominated by women, and now we've had a patriarchy for, I don't know, 5,000 to 8,000 years, I think. Because if you read the Old Testament, it's extremely patriarchal. So that's how old, how long, and it's good enough, I think. It's my opinion. So, but I don't wish to, me having gone into extremes and being thrown around all my life, I don't wish to go into another extreme where now all, everything is determined by women. I don't see the point of that at all. And I don't think it's something to strive after. I would like balance. I like men. And I think we could get further, as with everything. If we accept all kinds of people, we get furthest by working together. So, well, my dad, being a man, had no chance to ever look at his emotions, because that's not manly, at least in his generation. It was definitely so. And even now I see men as old as me, most men are not very good at expressing emotion and even being aware of their emotion. There's more and more that are, which is great, of course. But in my experience here in the village, in the boonies, it's not the majority, I would say. So women, of course, are much more, at least when I grew up, with the girls would talk a lot more about emotions than the boys. I don't think the boys talked about emotion at all, actually. I don't know, but it didn't feel like that. So I think my mother was more able to talk about emotion. But I don't know why, but she made this enormous myth. She built this enormous myth. So actually, even though it was difficult for me to get information about the war from my father, I have more information from him than from her. She built this myth of, my mother took care of us and that's why I was never scared. And I'm not sure, I think I told this in another video, that she told me that one day she said this to her sister, her older sister was 1 year older, and her sister totally freaked out and said, "What are you talking about?" Well, she's talking about a myth that she created to survive. And that's not bad. That's survive. I wouldn't be here if she hadn't survived, right? So, but the myth makes it kind of hard to actually interact on a day-to-day basis if you're a kid, if you're a child. So this is, as I've said many times, both my parents were severely traumatized by the war, being children in the war, and they reacted to it very differently. Their coping mechanisms were different. And then I get born as the first child, the very much awaited, longed for first child. And I get caught between these, well, I told you I believe in reincarnation, so I could also say I choose to come in to extreme emotional discrepancy. That was neutral, wasn't it? Which for a long time made life very difficult for me. Also because I didn't at all understand that. Because on the outside, it was so nice. I mean, I lived in a house where other people were saying, "Wow, your parents are so nice. They're so beautiful. I wish my parents were that nice." So there was a great discrepancy between what I experienced and what other people experienced on the outside. So yeah, there's this one thing, and then I looked a lot like my mother. She did as a kid, or I as a kid looked a lot like her, and people would point this out all the time. "Oh, you look just like your mother." So then, I mean, strange in a house where religion was basically absent, but I, as a small child, decided that I must be the daughter of the devil. And don't ask me how I got that idea. I have no idea. It sounds like my parents were Catholic. I mean, they were not. My father was not in the church. My mother was Protestant, but as I said, she wasn't really living it. It was just something you do, basically. So you're part of the church. She never even went to church. But I decided I was the daughter of the devil because I thought my mother was an angel. Oh, now I remember one thing. We used to collect small pictures. I don't know what they are called. You know, these shiny little pictures that you cut out of. There's like these papers, and there's all kinds of these small figures that are linked together with small strips of paper, and you cut them out, and then we had albums to collect them in, and then we would trade them in school also. So I had such an album, and one day I come to school, and this girl has this picture of this angel, like this, a larger picture, which was valuable to us. And the angel had the face of my mother. And then the thing is, we have this painting of her as a, I don't know, maybe 12-year-old. So before they fled. How did that survive? No, she must be older. No, it must be after. Anyway, she was telling they had a neighbor who was a painter. So my, it must be after the war. My grandfather, anyway, made a deal with him. So he and commissioned 2 portraits of my mother and her sister. So this portrait of her as a teenager or something, I had, and that face was on the angel, pretty much exact. So I gave all my little pictures to get that. I never was a negotiator. I made it super clear I would give everything to just have that. And they said, okay, I take everything. So I gave everything, all I had, to get that one. And then I remember I thought, if my mother is an angel, I took that kind of as a sign that my mother is an angel. So if my mother is an angel, and I look like her, but I am not, I knew it. I knew inside, I'm no angel. I knew that. I have things like envy, and I have things like, I want to steal things, I want to take things sometimes. I didn't do that very much actually, but do forbidden things. And there were lots of things that were forbidden. I told you, my mother was quite controlling. Not clean my room when I'm so I'm not an angel. That I was really sure of. So then I must be a devil. Because I look like her, but I am not at all an angel. So somehow I got the idea that it's the devil, and actually I think, I'm not so schooled in Catholic, the Catholic way of looking at it, but I believe that is also what is taught, that the devil poses as something very nice, so you have to be careful. Something like that. I think some Catholic friend told me. Yeah, of course, that I forgot again. Came back to me many years later. But I think, well, I had a very bad feeling about myself. Thus, I was not very connected to myself. I was not connected to my needs, trying to, just take care of everybody else. I was really bad at caring for myself, kind of like taking time outs when I took these book times, diving into books. And even in the night when I couldn't sleep, I had a pocket lamp that I got for Christmas one year. So I was lying under the cover reading books and diving into these books. And forgetting myself, just completely emotionally connecting to the books. I was really bad also in accepting help. I started to go a little bit crazy when I was 22. I was studying, I was making my own money, So I was working and studying at university, and then I had a short relationship with this guy, and that it was all getting too much. So I don't really remember. I remember that one thing, but it kind of, I know that there was like other things before, but I was starting to react quite strongly, emotionally, over the top, he thought, which was probably true. Anyway, one time I jumped out of his car while he was driving. Scared the bits out of him. I was still doing jiu-jitsu at the time, so I thought I would be good, and I was. And then after that, anyway, he said, you have to go into therapy, you have to go into therapy, I cannot help you, you need a therapist. So I looked around for a cheap therapist, because there was no way that I was getting this, you know, at that time, there was no way the insurance would pay for it that I had. So I had to even make the money for the therapist myself. So, and so I came to this woman, and I believe that is the first time in my life I was made aware of my body. I remember that she told me, you don't even breathe. Oh, I was chain smoking. I was actually chain smoking while I was doing the session, and that was okay. So she had the window open. And then she said, did you ever notice that you only breathe deeply when you inhale through a cigarette? And no, I hadn't. And then she says, well, you just look. And that was a completely new concept to me. Like, watching how I breathe. Yeah, it's actually very smart. But it was a completely new concept to me. So that was one thing. She made me aware of my breath for the first time. She made me aware how I stand. That I was really easy to topple, because I was much too stiff in my motions. I think that's why I had quite a bit of pain in my body. It's like this cramping up thing. That I've actually managed to do. You know, my father, by the time he died, he could not, I don't think, barely wash his hair anymore by himself, because he was so stiff. He got more and more and more and more and more stiff, and more pain in his shoulders. Really, really intense pain. So there I had a good pointer to watch it and to work with it, which I actually did. Yeah. So anyway, I didn't continue my, I went to this psychologist for 3 months, once a week. And so she gave me some really good, and she also, yeah, she said, for the one, she's completely convinced that I'm sexually abused. And I got really angry at her for saying that. At that time, that I remember, I freaked out. And she said that she had never met anybody, and she was quite a young woman, so that she'd never met anybody who had so much fear. And that at that time I had kind of started to do this John Wayne macho thing as a armor, I would say, as a protective thing. So I was wearing Western boots, cheap ones, since I didn't have money, but I was kind of doing this John Wayne thing. So I said to her, but I don't have any fears. And then she actually laughed. So, I mean, that's how I was with 22, 23. I'd never looked at how I breathe. I wasn't at all aware of my body. I wasn't at all aware of my feelings. Because even though I was getting panic attacks all the time, I was saying that I don't have any fears. Yeah, fear is a small word for what I was actually having. So I've come a long way. I have come a long way, and I think also I've had help for sure, and I think we all do. Call it guardian angel, or I don't know. So I'd love to know, but I don't. I've had animals helping me. So like in the Indian, I've had animals giving me messages in different situations. I've had opportunities open up which would give me the next step. I've had car accidents where an outside force stopped me from getting killed 4 times. 4 times I should have been dead. And an outside force stopped it, completely against the laws of physics. So, I mean, I've had enough experiences to know that there's a lot more than this 3D world. So I've had help, for sure. And I believe we all do. Everybody does. And sometimes I was aware that I was getting help. Sometimes I didn't know it until much later, when suddenly, oh my God, and because of that, much later. So that I'm older than 35 is because I got help. And actually, in the end, I believe if I hadn't met my husband, I probably could have not made it. I was already running on reserve batteries, even though I was trying to understand something spiritual, but I just I hadn't found security. I hadn't found a safe space. And that is what he actually provided for me, and still does. And in the beginning, very actively, when he understood how much I needed it. And he is also one that can do that, that is capable of that. So I actually think that my story this far is a success story. It's a success story. I mean, not from the point of view is like, now everything is rosy, violins playing, and they live happily ever after. Maybe there is no such thing, except for in Hollywood movies, maybe. But it's a success story if I look back and I see where I come from. And how my development went, and how much went wrong. I was not only with the car, also with health issues several times at the point of death. Not that I had a near-death experience, but that doctors thought I wouldn't make it. So I've actually not only made it, I mean, I have 3 children. They're doing their thing. I was really wanting to give them freedom. And I did my best. And yet they're bitching at me. Because they think I'm the toughest mother of all and I'm an impossible person and stuff. Well, I am that I am. And I was very strongly fighting to help them become their own. Free, strong, whoever they are. Because they're very different. All 3 of them. And I did my best. I mean, that's all I can say. I did my best. And at least they can bitch at me. They are capable to confront me. Really hard. I wasn't capable to confront my mother like that. At all. It's very, very few times I've actually confronted her. Now she's too old, so I will not do it. And it's not necessary anymore for me. I've made my peace with that. And that is also part of this journey. I think that is so important. You know, shit happens for everybody. Make peace. Whatever it takes. Painting pictures, running marathons, climbing mountains, writing diary, telling stories. And then there can be a next step. So the last sentence that I want to share with you that I took to balance this picture with is that I myself decide peacefully and securely about my own life. I decide. Maybe you think that's normal, of course, who else? Well, for me that, as I told you, or tried to convey, for many years it was not normal. I was reacting. I was not making decisions. And of course, again, this is the mountaintop at the end of the road. It's not like I do this every day and all the time, but comparatively much. I'm a good way on the path, and I have a direction. So if you actually watched all these videos, this is number 10, then I want you to know that I consider myself a success story. I actually do. And I thank you super much. I hope there's something in it that kind of gives you an idea, or I don't know how, if and how I will continue. My husband made the suggestion that I paint another series of 8 pictures, but painting the positive. In this case, then, I decide peacefully and securely about my life. Painting that. And then make another. I don't know if I can do that. Of course, I never know. I can try. I can start. And if I can, I will share it. So then that would be only fair, I think. Yeah. So this is the end of this round. Talking about it also makes me more relaxed, less stressed. So it's also definitely a healing process for me. thank you very much. I wish for you and all peoples on earth inner peace and security, to be able to calmly make their own decisions. And I think that would get us to peace on earth. Because, if you think about it, calmly, not stressed, not threatened, who would start a war? Huh? It's crazy. It's crazy. Who would scream for war? The Russian. It is crazy. It's not sane. Wars are not sane. They are insane. There's nothing good coming from a war. Except that some people who sell weapons are getting rich. Well, sorry, you guys. Do something else. Sorry. I cannot support that. Get rich some other way. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.